Who's ready for an impeachment? Yeah. About you, brother? You ready for an impeachment?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And good morning. What the hell is that? There's a 404.
I'm gonna assume error.
Okay, that's see if I could find that and get rid of it real quick. There we go. Okay, so whatever the hell that was, fixed it. All right, good morning. How you doing, brother?
Well, morning.
So there's a thing I want to talk about that I haven't gotten to yet. Eric Adams freaking out about immigrants in New York City. But the impeachment of Joe Biden is trending on Twitter this morning. So yeah, we're going to have to do that. Sergeant Major asks, can your kids watch? Absolutely. And let me know when they're watching.
Should they watch is an entirely separate question.
And they'll even understand a good bit of this because we do have some of these conversations at home. So let's bring up the article from the AP. Biden impeachment inquiry, what to know. Washington. AP, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy said he is launching an impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden, yielding to mounting pressure from former President Donald Trump and his allies in what's shaping up as an election year clash between Congress and the White House. Okay, that language right there, this language, the AP, man, the Associated Press is supposed to be like legitimate journalism. This right here, yielding to pressure from former President Donald Trump. So much packed into the language here. For one, that whole former president thing, we didn't used to do this, not until Donald Trump. It was always...
It's still President Biden. Title.
It's still President Biden. It's still...
I meant to say Obama. I was going to make a joke, and then I got ahead of myself.
Yeah, it's still President Obama. It's still President...
Carter. President Bush.
Exactly. But they always have to remind you, they always have to say former President Donald Trump. And especially when they're talking about anything related to former Vice President Joe Biden. So that by itself is loaded language. That's some of that damn. I lost the phrase I was thinking that I was gonna mention there. The conjugation.
Russell conjugation
that we've talked about in the past. Using the language to abuse your emotional filter for the purposes of this, and then the whole yielding to mounting pressure from former President Donald Trump, as if there are not legitimate reasons to impeach Joe Biden. So right now, the evidence against Joe Biden is very strong, and that evidence goes so far as to suggest that Biden has been actively engaged in money laundering, the receipt of bribes, and what should be considered to be treason. When I say that, I say it advisedly, based on the source of money laundering and bribes. You look at what's going on with the beginnings of World War III, Joe Biden, upon receipt of the mantle, as soon as he stepped into the White House, one of the very first things he did was shut down American oil production to the benefit of foreign donors in the Middle East. It is clear, I mean, it's painfully clear that Biden was bought and paid for. When we say bought and paid for, we've seen the documentation, we've seen the evidence that the Clintons, the Obamas, and the Bidens have all received significant funding from Middle Eastern donors. All the while they were going on with their hoax about the Russia collusion thing, Middle Eastern donors were dumping buckets and buckets of money into Democrat campaigns. And of course, the immediate result, as soon as Joe's got his hands on the levers of power, is he makes this maneuver, shutting down American oil and energy production, which is so nakedly pro not America that no reasonable person can come to the conclusion that it was done for any other reason than as a kickback to profit donors, which of course...
It's environmental concerns. And don't you follow the president's Twitter feed? It's environmental concern. That's why he went ahead and shut down more oil production, because of the environment.
Yeah, never mind the fact that America does it cleaner, faster, safer, and better than anybody else in the world. Some kind of moth. Yeah, just a naked maneuver. So when they impeached Trump twice, it was done not just without evidence, but on the shakiest, unintelligent evidence that could be generated. And we now know that all of that evidence was fabricated. Right? Everything, all of the so-called evidence was as legitimate as Schiff's reading of the transcript. Right? That was Schiff, wasn't it? Anyway, my wife says few people care about the environment where there's no money to buy food. Yeah, I forget who the quote comes from, but after the socialists and the communists have burned everything to the ground, and then they finally learn that you can't eat money, right? So, but back to the point about the impeachment. So when Donald Trump was impeached, it was nakedly obvious that what was happening is that the constitutional process of impeachment for high crimes and misdemeanors was being weaponized and politicized as a tool instead of used as the mechanism of fail-safe to ouster a president who was doing a bad job. Now, at the time, and I still maintain this actually, it just happens that the circumstances are amusingly fortuitous. At the time, I suggested that because of that weaponization and obvious politicization, that the Democrats had made such a farce out of the process of impeachment that going forward, we should just automatically plan on impeaching every Democrat president ever to be elected again, because the the Democrats have made such a point of abusing and corrupting the process. And when I say that, it's not just the two clearly illegitimate impeachments of Donald Trump, but remember, at least the first steps in filing to take the impeachment maneuver have been filed against every Republican president in living memory. There is nobody alive today who remembers a Republican president against whom impeachment was not attempted. I'm sure you all clearly remember, well, many of you clearly remember, maybe not my wife, she's not that old yet, clearly remember everybody calling for impeachment against George W. Bush over several different things. And of course it never happened, but they did make the maneuvers. They did do the early filing. And to be clear, they have not actually filed articles of impeachment yet, right? Kevin McCarthy said he is launching an impeachment inquiry. Tim Pool's talked about this a little bit on his show. So, they're gonna officially announce that they're considering the official consideration of the question of whether or not to considering an inquiry into the question of whether or not they should think about impeachment. Yeah, kinda. So, don't get too excited just yet. But I'd like to remind you that in the case of Donald Trump, the things that he was impeached for are things for which there was no evidence in the first case. And the second impeachment was over the Ukraine phone call, the argument being that there was the quid pro quo. And we now see that the so-called quid pro quo at worst was identical to Joe Biden acting on a quid pro quo against Ukraine as well in order to get that prosecutor fired. And it has since been argued by the Dems that that was just him acting on foreign policy. And Obama was actually the lead man on that. We do have evidence now from various communications records, emails, phone call records, much of which is related to Hunter Biden's laptop, that Hunter called in and asked explicitly for the prosecutor to be removed. So we now know that it's unintelligible to argue that Biden was simply working on American foreign policy there. Hunter actually called his daddy and said, "Daddy, there's a prosecutor that's going to throw me out of Ukraine, and I'm going to lose my $83,000 a month job, and you're going to lose access to the access peddling operation in Ukraine. We got to get rid of this prosecutor." And so Biden went over to Ukraine and extorted the Ukrainian government to conduct that specific act of extortion and money laundering.
I do think there's some truth to there being politics being played here. I don't know if you noticed, Kevin McCarthy is not the most popular House Speaker that has ever occupied that position.
He is not. And we made fun of him a lot for the number of votes that he failed to win to get into that spot.
Right. Anyhow,
I have been pleasantly surprised with him since he took the spot, though. I mean, don't take that as a glowing endorsement, but he's done better than I expected.
Anyhow, I do think there is some truth to it. Now, that does not mean that there is not also a good reason to investigate Joe Biden. Like, there's, let's be clear. But I do think there's some truth to it, because politicians are playing politics. To which I say, gosh, please. I heard about this from the Krasensteins. So that should tell you everything that you need to know right there. And my first thought was, gosh, please do go on. Tell me how frustrating it is to use impeachment to score cheap political points.
Right.
Please tell me all about it. I would love to hear your thoughts on the subject. And then, of course, if this is the particular thing that gets pushed, when Donald Trump called Ukraine and was like, hey, the perfect phone call, I think there's some really shady shit going on here. Can you get back to me with the shady shit it looks like Joe Biden is doing in your country? And that's the thing that Donald Trump actually got impeached over. Oh, wait a minute. Turns out there might have been some really shady shit that the Bidens were doing in Ukraine. And Donald Trump knew that.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, if I think you're selling cocaine and I think that you have a cocaine empire that you're running out of your shed in the backyard, it's not corrupt for me to get a search warrant to search your shed. It's also not corrupt for me to go to your neighbors and be like, hey, you ever see any funny activity coming out of that shed back there? That's not corrupt. That's how you investigate the actual crime, which is exactly what
might be corruption. Like the crime itself might be corruption.
And so
investigating corruption is not necessarily corruption.
Yeah. So anyhow, like the fact that Donald Trump was ever impeached for this in the first place. And then once again, Xander Mack jumped to the end of my point. Stop reading my mind, Xander. I promise I was going to get there. However, all that being said, because I think that this is a strange combination of legitimate and tied into stuff that happened with Donald Trump, but also a fair amount of political theater, I think the odds of anything coming to this are low. Frankly, we shouldn't be impeaching Joe Biden. We should be removing him from office because he's not fit to do the damn job. Yes, I realize that means we'd have President Spitroast replacing him, but I mean, at least she's not obviously demented.
Well, the problem there is we can't 25th Amendment the president. The Republicans cannot remove him from office under the 25th Amendment because the 25th Amendment requires that removal action be initiated by the vice president.
Yeah, no, that's not my point. My point is...
No, I don't disagree with your point. That is the reason he should be removed.
Okay,
but it's not an option.
Okay.
No, I agree with your point. Yes, like, okay. For example, earlier today I saw this tweet. Did I already pull away from? I may have lost it already. Somebody tweeted out something about how Biden is way healthier than Trump, even though Biden's 4 or 5 years older than Donald Trump. They're like, but Trump's a fatty fat. Why don't they ever make his health an issue? And I replied to the guy, it's like, really? Because I'm old enough to remember that throughout 2016, throughout his original campaign, throughout his administration, and throughout his reelection campaign, Democrats were constantly fat-shaming Donald Trump, going on about his fast food diet and his age, and they actually repeatedly said that he was losing his mental faculties, that he wasn't mentally stable enough to be the president, et cetera, et cetera. And then they gave us the octogenarian who shits on the Pope's shoes. So, and I said something to that effect, and I ended it with your gaslighting, and you know it. And they are, right? Anybody who suggests that we're ignoring Donald Trump's health conditions because we don't like Biden, you're gaslighting. You're a fucking... liar, and that's a daddy word that you can use when you're daddy's kids. You're a liar. They absolutely went after Donald Trump on all those points, and they'll do it again. They are doing it.
They're
again.
currently doing it. Yes.
And no, we're not ignorant to the fact. The fact, however, is Donald Trump is, by the polling data, the likely winner of a 2024 election that does not include massive fraud.
Fortification.
Or direct interference by, I don't know, 4 separate prosecutors and 4 separate judges. Yeah, let's just go ahead and have a trial the day before Super Tuesday. That doesn't sound suspicious at all. Oh, and let's not just put that trial right before Super Tuesday. Let's make sure that by clearly scheduling the trial with the explicit purpose of interfering in the election, we also supersede and hamstring the other trial. It's psychotic what's happening there. Xander Mack says this is McCarthy trying to appease Republicans, and Republicans will fall for it. I'll give you a maybe on that. More than appeasement, however, Alex, I think there's got to be a point at which how do I formulate this correctly?
I don't think he's terribly...
To say that it's merely appeasement, it's still the case that we're talking about an elected official. And so to some extent, appeasing Republicans, appeasing the voter base is in fact his job. And part of our job as American citizens and voters is to pressure our representatives into taking the actions we want them to take. I don't disagree necessarily that this is, at least in part, his attempt to appease citizens. I won't say that that's all he's doing here, because it's also painfully clear that there is a legitimate impeachment on the table for Joe Biden, or at least according to the law, there should be. And like I said, to the question of appeasing Republicans, his job is to do what we tell him to do. And that's true of every elected official. And that's one of the places that, in theory, Republicans and Democrats should be able to set themselves apart.
Actually, it goes back to what I was trying to say before. I think this just happens to be a confluence of McCarthy doing what is politically intelligent. I mean, is there a lot of good reasons? Yes. But also, are a lot of those good reasons also political reasons? I don't even know why I'm air quoting the word political, because, it is. It's the same thing. Will it go anywhere? No. The fact that Hunter's plea deal was thrown out, that's actually a pretty huge point of leverage. And if it were me and I was allowed to move all the chess pieces around as I saw fit, as it were, I think I'd let those federal charges stew against Hunter a little bit longer. That's what I would do. McCarthy, I do think that there is a good chance. Well, let me just say this, and then I'll shut up. I do think that there is a good chance that a large part of what McCarthy's doing is theater. Which leads me back to, gosh, tell me how frustrating it is to have your politicians play with impeachment just to make their base get the feel goods. Please. But I do think a lot of it's just theater. Useful theater, maybe even. but
Right.
but theater.
Yeah, I'm not getting my hopes up too much.
Oh, I don't have them up at all. I don't have them the slightest bit up.
I will say that anything is better than nothing, and that's what we've been.
Is it though? If you are sick, and I pretend to give you medicine and hope that the placebo effect lets you trick yourself into feeling better, wouldn't nothing have just been better? There's that old Ben Franklin quote. I forget exactly how it goes, but basically the most humane thing you could do with poverty is make it uncomfortable.
And I agree with that entirely. I want to address this. Alex says you're hoping they move forward based on a House investigation, not law enforcement, based on weaker evidence than the Democrats had on Trump. No, that's simply incorrect. To say that the evidence that is currently available on Biden's wrongdoings is weaker than the evidence that they had on Trump is, come on, Alex, you're smarter than that. We now know that even the very weak evidence they had on Trump was fraudulent, fabricated. They never had any actual evidence at all on Trump, and what evidence they ever did have was not as strong as the direct testimony of people who were directly related to the events in question. Joe Biden's personal confession on camera of the active wrongdoing and the communications, the active communications that have been retrieved from the Biden laptop, coupled with the existing bank statements that show the intermixing of illicit finances between Hunter and Joe. Like, I mean, the evidence for the claims is extremely strong. I mean, it's hard to produce legal evidence that's more compelling than 2 decades of complex financial records keeping.
So, yeah, we're coming up on 8 o'clock.
We are.
I don't.
Okay.
I hope it goes somewhere. I really do. But,
So I'd like to close on this.
but I don't think it's gonna.
From the Babylon Bee. From the Babylon Bee, Democrats say Republicans are just using impeachment to try to get around a rigged election system. Guys, if you don't already check out the Bee almost every day, check out the Babylon Bee. Democrats have expressed aghastment at the GOP's new low of using impeachment to try and get around an election system that has been thoroughly and substantially rigged. Those conniving Republicans are at it again, said Senator Chuck Schumer, ever so nasally from the steps of the Capitol. They're always trying to undermine our constitutional structures just to get around how we undermined our nation's election process. The nerve! Y'all go check that one out. Here, I'll even drop the link in the chat there. I love the Babylon Bee.
The Babylon Bee is what the Onion used to be before.
Right. Well, the Onion was always lefty, but then they went so far left that they forgot how to be funny.
Yeah, like there has to be an actual joke. Like if you just keep saying Orange Man bad. Okay, but where's the joke? Orange Man bad. Ha ha. Okay, but where's the joke? Like I don't mind a Trump joke. It just needs to be funny. Oh, look, he's Cheeto Hitler? Gosh. Never heard that one before.
Right. All right, guys, y'all be safe out there. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.